So let's take a look at the answers to this exercise. Remember, this is all about predicting what we think the temperatures will be like in a certain area based on those variables that we now know affect whether it's going to be hot or cold and how much do temperatures change from summer to winter. First, a little bit of a review. And this is going to curious. We need this as a starting point. Blank is a measure of the amount of friction between moving particles. Well, that's what temperature is. Remember, temperature is all about friction, how much stuff is moving. There is less air at higher elevations, so temperatures tend to be lower, because if there's less air moving around, there's going to be less stuff hitting each other and hence less friction, which is what temperature is. Now, third question, the land or sand, like in our lab, will change temperature more than water. This means, that last question, locations near water will not change temperature as much as places that are away from the water. So now let's apply that knowledge. And we're going to look at number 2 and number 23. Which location would have a colder temperature? Well, it's got to be number 23, because 23 is at a higher elevation than number 2. You notice that number 2 is in the green and number 23 is way up in the mountains. So number 23 would be colder than number 2. Which one do we think would be hotter, number 5 or number 3? Well, this is still an elevation question because neither one of these places have anything to do with the water. They're not on the coast and they're not islands. So the only difference between number 5 and number 3 is their elevation. Well, number 3 is in the green, number 5 is in the brown. We know that's a higher elevation, so it's going to be cooler, which means number 3 is going to be hotter. Colder temperatures, 4 or 26? Well, number 26 here, it's in the yellow. Number 4 is in the orange. 4 is a higher elevation, and we know higher elevations are colder than lower ones. So number 4 is going to be colder than number 26 because it's higher up the mountain. Which one would have a colder temperature? We've got 19 or 20. Well, 19 is in the green. 20 is in that kind of, brownish color, so that's up in the mountains. So 20 is going to be colder because it's more up in the mountains. 18 or 9. This is still an elevation thing. Well, 9's down really, really low. You can see it's in the lowest elevation range. 18 is higher up, so it's going to be colder than 9. So 18 is going to be colder than 9. Which one do you think is going to be hotter, number 1 or number 16? Well, 1 is at a higher elevation because of the color than number 16, so 16 is going to be the hotter of the two of those. Now, this is a question based on our lab activity this week. Which one's going to change temperatures more? And this is all about the water, because remember that water doesn't change temperature as much as the land. So if you're near the water, you're not going to change as much as a place that is way away from the water. So we look at 9 and 10. Number 10, down here in New Orleans, or Louisiana, it's right on the Gulf of Mexico. It's right next to this big body of water. So water doesn't change temperatures much. It means that number 10 is not going to change temperatures much. Number 9 is surrounded by land. So it's going to change temperatures more easily than number 10 because 10 is near the water and 9 isn't. So this question is, which one's going to change more? It's going to be number 9 because it's not near the water. Which one's going to change less, 21 or 5? Well, 21 is right on the coast. It's right on the Pacific Ocean. And if you'll remember from the video when I was actually in California and I was showing you, hey, here's the Pacific Ocean back here. It's 50-something degrees and it's always going to be 50-something degrees. That means the places along the California coast, don't change temperatures that much. They never get really hot or really cold. Well, look at number 5. Number 5 is way away from the ocean. It's surrounded by a bunch of land. So 5 is going to change a lot, which means 21 is not going to change much at all. So the answer here would be 21 is going to change less than 5. Change less, 29 or 7. Well, notice that 7 up here in Maine is right on the Atlantic Ocean. Well, the ocean is going to keep number 7 from changing temperatures a lot because the water doesn't change temperatures as much. Number 29 is way away from the ocean, so it's going to change temperatures a lot more easily. So which one is going to change less? Number 7, because it's on the coast. Which one do you think is going to be hotter in the summer, 12 or 19? Well, number 9 is not on the water, number 12 is. Which one of these is going to change more? The one that is surrounded by land is going to change more than the one that's on the coast. So when the summertime comes, number 12's temperature is not going to get as hot as number 9 because the water right next to it doesn't get as hot. So in the summertime, number 9 is going to be hotter than number 12 because number 9's temperature is going to change a lot. It's going to be able to go up more than number 12. That's just what we saw in our lab. Like the sand was able to get hotter than the water. Which one would likely be colder in the wintertime? We got number 4 is all surrounded by sand. Number 6 is out here beside the water. So we saw that the sand will get hotter in the summer. When the light bulb was on, the sand got hotter. When we turned our light bulb off, the sand got colder. Well, turning the light bulb off is like winter. So number 4 over here is like our sand. And when the light bulb's turned off, which is what like wintertime is, when there isn't much energy from the sun, number 4 is going to get colder than number 6. Number 6 is going to stay a little bit warmer because this water out here just isn't going to cool down as much as this land. So which one's going to be colder in winter? That would be number 4. Which one's going to be colder in the summer? Okay, now we look at these two. This is a different question because neither one of these two is on the water. They're both surrounded by land, so they're going to change about the same from summer to winter. It's not like one is on the water and the other one isn't. So we got to say to ourselves, what's different about number 8 and number 25? Well, the difference between these two is the elevation. Number 8 is in the yellow, and this is kind of in that brownish orange. The difference in those two locations is elevation. Number 25 is way up in the mountains versus number 8. Well, what do we know about the mountains? When you're up in the mountains, you're always going to be colder than someplace that isn't. So number 25 is going to be colder in the summer. It's also going to be colder in the winter because it is higher up in elevation. Which one do you think would be colder in the summertime? Okay, now neither one of these two places, number 2 or number 24, neither one is right on the coast. So this is an elevation question. Number 24 is way up in the mountains, and number 22, it's down in the low green color. Well, the lower you are, the hotter you're going to be. The higher you are, the colder it's going to be. So in summertime, which one's going to be colder? It's going to be number 24 because it's way up in the mountains. All right, so let's say that you like temperatures that are always the same. You don't like this whole hot in summer and cold in winter deal. You want to stay someplace, you want to live someplace where the temperatures are about the same year round. The question is, which of these places would you choose? So you want temperatures that don't change much. That means you want to be near water, because water doesn't change temperature that much. Well, if you look at 3, 3 is surrounded by land, number 1 is surrounded by land, but number 10 is next to the water. So the one that's not going to change much is going to be number 10. All right, let's say you wanted to live someplace where the summers could get really hot and the winters could get really cold. You like that change of season. Where should you choose to live? Well, 14 is on the ocean and 6 is on the ocean, so they're not going to change as much as a place that's away from the ocean. So you want to live at number 4, because that's a place where you're going to get really hot in the summer and then you'll get really cold in the winter because you're surrounded by land. Okay, let's look at some pairs of cities. Which pair of cities do you think is most alike? In other words, which 2 pairs do you think are going to be like each other? Well, 17 and 25. Let's look at these. 17, well, it's on the coast and it's at a really low elevation. 25 is away from the coast and it's really high up in the mountains. Well, those 2 places are going to be really different from one another. Number 8 and number 7, the ones outlined in black. Well, 8 is way away from the water and number 7 is right on the water. So that means those 2 places are going to be very different throughout the year. One's going to change a lot and the other one isn't. Let's look down here, number 10 and 11. 10 is on the water and 11 is on the water. So those 2 are very similar to one another. So they're going to have very similar temperatures. Number 10 and number 11 are the pair that are going to be fairly similar to one another. All right, some thinking questions here. These are the Florida Keys, and this is a chain of islands at the bottom of Florida. What do you think could be true about these temperatures here? Well, they're islands. They're surrounded by water. The conclusion that you can make is that their temperatures are always going to be about the same. Because they're surrounded by water, they're not going to get really hot from summer to winter, and they're not going to change a lot from winter to summer. So that's what we know about islands. Now, somebody asked in the chat yesterday, well, can islands be cold? Sure. If this was a set of islands like off Alaska, they would always be cold. They wouldn't change a whole lot from summer to winter. They would always remain the same, which could be cold. These are islands in Florida. They're not going to change a lot, but because they're in Florida, they're always going to be hot. Okay, physical map of Los Angeles. Notice we got some mountains on here and we got a couple different locations. Which location do you think probably changes the least? When we talk about temperature changes, we're talking about water. So which one of these has the biggest deal with water? Well, it's not going to be D and C, because neither one of those are on the water. They're away from the coast. But our choices here are going to be B and A. Which one of those do you think is going to change the least? Well, that's going to be A, because A is an island. It's surrounded by water, whereas B only has water on one side. So which one is going to change the least? That's going to be A, because we know that about islands. Which location probably changes the most? Well, that's going to be the one that's furthest away from the water, and that would be C. The further away you are from the water, the more your temperatures change. Which one would likely have the coldest temperatures? Well, A and B are always going to remain pretty close to the same because they're close to the water. So if we want to talk about, well, which one's going to have the chance to get the coldest? It's got to be either C or D, because they're away from the water so they can get colder. But what's different about C or D is elevation. Well, D is up in the mountains, so it's going to get colder than C. So the one that is going to change the most and most likely get colder is going to be D. All right, which one of these statements is true? Location B would change less than C because it's closer to water. So B and C. Yeah, B is going to change less because it's on the water and C is away from the water. So I know that's, I'm going to get rid of this one. I know that one. That's not right. Oh, wait. Sorry, I misspoke there. Let me erase that. Here we go. B would change less than C, so I know that's a correct statement. But remember, with things like true and false statement, we need to read all of the choices. Location D would likely always be the hottest because of elevation. Well, D is up in the mountains, so we know that the mountains are going to make things cooler, so that's not true. You wouldn't be the hottest at D. Location A would change temperatures a lot because it's an island. And we know that's not true because islands don't change a lot because they're surrounded by water. So in this case, the only correct answer was A. Now you can see, even me reading this answer key, you got to be careful with reading it. Which one changes the most? Which one changes the least? Which one's in summer? Which one's in winter? With these questions, you have to be very careful and read very specific words. Is it talking summer or winter? Is it changing a lot or changing a little? Is it colder or is it hotter? So we will continue to do more practice with this because there are more factors that are going to change temperatures that we're going to look at starting tomorrow. But I wanted to make sure that we have an understanding of what differences the water make and now what differences the elevation make before we move on to the other things that can affect temperature.